Welcome to Mine Explorers, where we are in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we are at the Virginia Department of Energy in the Rock Garden. And I'm joined again by Dr. Richard Bishop, Professor of Practice for Mining Engineering at Virginia Tech. And we're very excited to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Here we meet at another conference, right?
Another conference.
So it's good to have this chat in person now, and hopefully, the audience enjoys the better scenery this time.
Better scenery, we're outside, it's a beautiful day, and we both got to speak today already, so.
Yeah. So I came by Stuart's request, talk a little bit more about the project, and I think we could probably talk to your audience about that today.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Did a little feature today on monazite as a potential source of rare earth minerals, and I think you were talking about staking claims today, and I think you gave a presentation
Staking claims
yesterday.
in the West, yeah, and I gave a presentation yesterday on looking for Pozzolan, which, as you guys know, I've been doing a lot of that. Looking for Pozzolan, and we do a lot of claim staking. So we're at the Forum of the Geology of Industrial Minerals this year in Charlottesville, and it travels every year. We haven't picked a location for next year yet, but we'll let you guys know as soon as we do. It's well worth attending, great show, and yeah, so what have you been up to?
So, raising young kids is a big thing, but we're closer to starting the project that I mentioned to your audience just a few months ago.
Fantastic.
In contract negotiations with DOE, hoping we start here in a couple months, start of the summer. Just doing other kind of auxiliary research, speaking at a lot of different conferences too in this interim period. I'm really curious because I think we talked about in your last podcast about the differences between mining or resources in the East versus resources in the West, and now that you've had a chance to visit my home state of Virginia, visit a mine already, how different would you say it is Virginia than Utah?
Yeah, so you know what, it's not actually really all that different.
Okay.
The land issues and things is different. Like we visited Atlantic Strategic Minerals earlier this week, which is a heavy mineral sand project where they're producing zircon, and they're producing titanium minerals, and as well as the monazite, which you had a fantastic presentation on. And it was interesting because one of the key differences, so the mine itself and the operations and the processing stuff is pretty similar to what you'd see in the West. But one of the key differences is they're mining in farmers' fields.
Right.
And so their community engagement and the way they engage with the locals is so much more different and so much more personal, because the farmer has family that lives literally a half a mile from where they're mining, and they're mining in fields that they own and fields that will eventually be returned to them. And so, they mentioned that the owner of these fields, he's happy to collect the royalty, and he's really happy with them and the operation, but he comes out and drives around and makes sure everything looks good and stuff. And it's a kind of level of engagement you don't necessarily see in the West once operations have started. There's a lot of community activity around the beginning, and then by the time operations are going, they've kind of forgotten about it and moved on to the next thing. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you gathered, but a lot of those properties, those families have been passed from generation to generation.
Yep.
So I think people are extremely curious when they find out they're actually going to do some mining on tobacco fields, soybean fields, whatever it may be.
It was interesting. It was tobacco, soybeans, and cotton, and peanuts. That's peanuts too. Which you don't see in the West. So that was interesting.
I told your audience before, it's a great place to work as a young mining engineer, processing engineer. Very close to where I grew up, and the really cool thing now is there's been some new investment and kind of a new company stepped in, and it's already gotten to work, right? And looking at a lot of different optionality on critical minerals, and monazite is a rare earth source. I don't know how much they've talked about that, but it's certainly, I think, something in the heavy minerals sands world where there's certain, I think, some opportunity there, not just for Atlantic Strategic, but other players in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of opportunity, and they did mention that they're collecting the monazite now, and they're looking at building out the potential to further concentrate it on site. And then you had a great presentation today about what would happen from there, and looking at potential hub and spoke relationships and things. You mentioned Energy Fuels and their White Mesa mill where they're already running monazite, And so any domestic sources, that's a natural location where it can go. And with these kind of rare earths, we're talking about the concentrates are not train loads of material either. So hub and spoke becomes really feasible when you have concentrates that are lower volume like that.
Yeah, and those heavy mineral sands in particular, I mean, I could see as something, you know, it's because it's so relatively easy to mine it and process it, and leads to a monazite concentrate that the hub and spoke could actually happen very, very quickly.
Right.
As opposed to some of the other stuff I'm looking at. We're almost there, but I think more of the mineral recovery, like coal associated with rare earths, for example,
Right.
Needs to still be developed and refined more. And monazite, I think, is more turnkey.
Right.
You know, the other thing, I guess, for your audience that isn't familiar with heavy mineral sands, I mean, the predecessor for the property you went to was an Australian company called Atlantic Strategic, or excuse me, Iluka Resources.
Iluka.
Yeah,
Atlantic Strategic's the new one.
Exactly, but if you know, if your audience does a little bit of research, they'll see some cool things happening in Western Australia
Yes.
with them. So
Yeah,
you know, very
Iluka,
similar to what can
yep.
happen in the U.S., I think.
Iluka Resources, yeah, they're in Western Australia, and they
Mm-hmm.
definitely very interesting. Yeah, monazite is fascinating, and there are several places in the world, and the United States is like barely on the radar for that, and I think we could produce a lot more of it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to your question about the project, so you know, it's a little hard to tell our project boundary, so it kind of cuts off at you know, the I guess the coastal part of Virginia, and certainly into North Carolina. It's much further inland to western North Carolina. But
right.
that project we were talking about last episode is essentially looking at primarily waste streams and you know, byproduct critical minerals that we could recover. And my task and my team's task primarily is characterization. So getting in the field, collecting samples, analyzing what's in those samples, and coming as close to we can as resources of you know, what's the quantity or at what rate could we produce lithium from produced water, or rare earths from fly ash impoundment at an old coal-fired power plant, for example. Or
Right.
you know, in the cases of coal mining, whether it's underground or surface, is, you know, one of the things we talked about last time was if you're already mining coal and you're exposing that enriched mineralization underneath that coal seam and leaving it in the ground and then never
Yes.
going back to remine it, and remining can be quite difficult, but if you're able to recover and capture that material at source, it's a lot more cost effective to do so.
Right.
So we'll be doing a lot of that when we get started, but you know, again, the exciting thing for me is you know, we've got all these different types of deposits, not just of rare earths, but other critical minerals we can look at. And you know, actually this conference was great. This is my first time attending, but there were representatives from all over the US, but including some from Western North Carolina, and you know, all through the region that I'm investigating. So
It's good, good. Yeah, I was hoping there'd be some good relationships here that you could get out of it, as well as sharing the knowledge of what you're doing with the attendees. And yeah, good conference in terms of industry participation. Obviously, the Virginia Department of Energy and had a lot of people here, and they spoke and participated a lot, and were instrumental in arranging the field trips and everything. And then the USGS sent a lot of people, and obviously we're close to their home base here, but it was good to have them here to actually interface, talk to the industry, see what's going on, and then hopefully get more future participation in the forum, which was great. So with your project, obviously very large project, you have a lot of other resources you're pulling in to help. How do you see it kind of unfolding? What are the bottlenecks? What are some of the parts of it that you're excited to work on?
Well, you know, just I think since we last spoke, there were some initial conversations with industry happening then. I mean, certainly well into the project from phase 1 to phase 2, but because the project's delayed to some extent, some industry partners are quite excited to start sampling now.
Good.
And so actually last week I picked up several dozen samples that were collected at some mine sites, and industry's curious, you know, what's in them.
Right.
So to me, that's really exciting, like seeing industry so engaged, because we, you know, from the academic side, we've got a lot of money on this grant, but when you've got 11 states do exploration, I mean, you know, and 60 critical minerals, it's a tall order, right?
No, absolutely.
But when you have industry participate in leveraging, you know, what they're already doing their own exploration. They may not be exploring for rare earths.
Right.
You may have gas companies that have natural gas wells, and they're injecting produced water, but they probably aren't looking at the lithium concentrations in that produced water.
Right.
And that's something that we're looking at. So it basically, gives us more economy in the exploration work that we can do, having those partnerships.
That's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah, there's the interesting thing about rare earths in general and some of these critical minerals is they're rare and critical, and there's not a lot of domestic supply because they're in lower concentrations or they're smaller volume and things like that. And so they often serve well as ancillary products to kind of a core product, be it coal, or in the case of Atlantic Strategic, the monazite is a smaller product when they're producing primarily the zircon and the other things. And so it suits itself well, but they may be just focused on operations and their primary product and not thinking about that. So having someone outside who has the funding to say, hey, have you considered this or that? I know with the Pozzolans that I've been really interested in, a lot of the industry partners that I'm working with are really not partners, but they would be customers down the road that are interested in Pozzolan, are asking about, are there mine tailings? Are there other waste streams? We can find a similar situation to fly ash, where there's a waste that we can pick up and then make good use of, which is not only good economic sense, but it's good ecological sense. It's good for the environment, and it just is good for communities too, because we're actually using the whole product versus having a bunch of waste, which is great.
Right, and I guess the other part of your question with the research activity that I've been engaged with, I've got the one project that's quite large, that is primarily characterization focused. We're doing some other things, looking at the infrastructure, looking at obviously workforce development, looking at technology development, things like that. But it's still very much focused on identifying the resources throughout this large region that we've got. But in parallel, there have been a number of other opportunities that we've applied for that could land in similar, with similar timing. So, maybe by the end of the summer, there's potential that some other projects could land that complement this characterization project. And, I think one of the really important things specific to I think the coal associated rare earths is really testing the recoverability at greater scale.
Yes.
So pilot projects, right, in the field. So we're engaged with several applications at this point that have not been selected like the other project, but we've got our fingers crossed that we could be a part of those as well. And again, these projects complement each other extremely well. A lot of my colleagues at the university are also very much engaged in similar things. So putting all that that research power together and learning from each other, I think, is what will hopefully drive this towards commercialization in the near future.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's good that they're not just looking at things from and funding things from a geological perspective, where we just need to know where things are, like doing the characterization and looking at some of the active operations, and then looking at some of the engineering and other considerations and stuff up front is really important, particularly like with the pilot plants and things. It's all great that the mineral's there, but can it be done? Can it be extracted? And I know we left our last conversation with, there's a lot of potential and a lot of interesting things, and particularly in Appalachia and some of these coal projects and things, but can it actually be done, and can it be done economically? And I think the next really 2-3 years from now, we'll have a lot of those answers.
Well, I think the other funny thing you and I both know, the 3 months since we last did one of these podcasts together, there's been a lot of industry activity, and not just the grants. So there's grant side that I think is more in your neck of the woods out west with tungsten. Well, I don't know, there may be a few things related to tungsten, but certainly germanium and gallium. In Utah and Nevada, California, some western states, but even in Tennessee, you've got Nearstar and you've got Korea Zinc moving in and building gallium, germanium capacity at the smelter level. But we've seen some companies, some Canadian junior companies that can kind of put that at-risk capital to work and redevelop mines. And we're seeing some acquisitions in Nevada and tungsten. We've seen acquisitions in germanium in Utah. So things could be starting to move forward at a very quick pace, which, I think you and I are both quite excited to see.
Very excited, yeah. And in terms of our capacity, I know I mentioned just in the last episode, our geos are full out. All of our field techs are full out. We're super busy. You mentioned Utah and the germanium and gallium. the Apex mine was recently acquired by Blue Moon, and I've had an interest in that project for a long time, and so I immediately engaged with them and said, hey, you have an underground mine that's been closed up. We have a team who specializes in going into abandoned mines, sampling, assessing, and so we've already started that process, and then we're looking at some of the other operations. But there's a lot of capital, particularly the juniors who have that risky capital that are coming in, and they may not have the money to invest in the processing side and the smelting side and some of that, but they have the capital to go do some exploration drilling and work on some of these resources that have really just been sitting, the Apex mine since the 80s. A lot of the tungsten mines that are being explored really heavily haven't been looked at since the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
that's
we're
changing
really
the world of
picking up.
exploration, right? So there's a lot of technologies that can be leveraged now that weren't even a twinkle in a thought before. So
yeah, and it's been helpful with the USGS is here, and there's been a lot of talk about Earth MRI, and I've started using that data recently. They did Central Utah, they did a radiometric survey, and they did a really good mag survey, so I've been able to pull that data in and compare it to the geologic mapping that we have, and it's been super useful. So the pieces with on the private side, on the commercial side, and then the pieces with the government side and the grants and things are actually starting to come together and create real momentum that I think a lot of people in the industry were skeptical about.
Oh, sure.
First, right?
And rightfully so. It's a cyclical industry.
Right.
And we've seen these cycles before. I've never seen it of this magnitude in my, short career. But
it's all running at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all running.
And as you say, I mean, I'm working on a proposal right now with some other researchers that are addressing some of that recoverability, that processing technology that has never been tested before. And again, this particular project that I'm working on, again, it's not funded yet, but we've solicited a lot of industry partnership where we could get samples, get their feedstocks, and actually test real world scenario materials through it. So, we'll see if it lands, but again, a lot of this is all happening in parallel.
Right.
So I think it'll be very interesting 2-3 years from now where we end up.
Yeah, and that's really important because having the resource is only one part of the puzzle. You have to be able to process it and get it to market. And then there's still a lot of, the upstream, the juniors, and a lot of that's focusing on the upstream. It's kind of the midstream where you're focusing, where you're looking at some of the upstream, but then you're also looking at some of the characterization, the processing, things like that, and probably getting more involved in that. But then we still have we have these magnet concentrates, now what? We need that. And I think there's been some interesting development there, which talks about building domestic facilities to build batteries for EVs, to build rare earth batteries and things like that. Or rare earth magnets, sorry. So it's pretty interesting to see all those pieces come together. But there's definitely, at the rate it's happening right now, I think there's definitely going to be gaps and things that need to be filled in over time. But
sure, and I've seen the criticism from some, we don't necessarily have the full demand domestically yet. A lot of the materials are still, being manufactured in Asia or wherever they may be put together. But that is changing. And, and I mean, the other thing I noticed, I think it was in the last week, but Colorado School of Mines, I think, announced a big technology innovation center in Golden, Colorado. This is exactly the types of thing that Department of Energy was talking about for my first phase project, and it's actually happening right now, and that could incubate some new entrepreneurship, some new ideas, both on the mining side, geology side, but even those downstream industries and new materials that could even be created from some of this. So.
It's exciting.
It is unprecedented times, yeah. I mean, it's really, I've never seen anything like this in my mining career.
Yeah, it's so crazy to see everything at once. We have the precious metals, we have the base metals, we have all these battery minerals, and then we have the rare earths, and we have all these strategic metals, and they're all running at once, and so it's wild. But yeah, not to be outdone by Colorado, Utah, the University of Utah has a critical minerals institute that they're starting as well, which will have some specialized research into not only the minerals, but building the materials and the processing and things like that, which is the state of Utah, like many states, has said we want to be the hub for critical minerals in the the U.S. And so it's good to see. I mean, I've heard several states say that now, but a little bit of competition between states and incentives for industry is only going to help.
Well, and I got to throw a plug to Virginia Tech. So you've got Claire Resources building in a pilot plant in our corporate research center.
Fantastic, yeah.
You know, they're planning to build operations. I think the material, I believe, comes from Brazil, but they're planning to build a processing plant in Louisiana, but they're doing a lot of testing work in Blacksburg, Virginia, where Virginia Tech is located.
Fantastic,
so
yeah.
Great for our students to get exposure to that.
Yeah.
You know, great to bring some of the intellectual capacity of some of my colleagues at Virginia Tech in on that.
Yeah.
And it's all happening right now. Yeah.
So that's a good segue. We talked previously about, in education, the lack of interest from students in getting into mining and all the mining associated fields. Are you seeing an improvement in that since we spoke last?
So yeah, I mean, again, it's only been 3 months, but but it feels like sometimes a year. But
things are moving quick.
Yeah, so I did a guest lecture 2 weeks ago in a space mining class we teach at Virginia Tech.
Fantastic.
It's really targeted towards first-year students that are kind of undecided what they want to study.
Fun. I would love to take a class like that.
Yeah, no, and students enjoy it. I mean, I've never taught it, but I've done a few guest lectures for it over the years, and I met a couple students that were first-year engineers that had already decided on mining. In fact, one decided, you know, I had actually done a talk to high school students that were, you know, doing a tour of the university and a tour of the College of Engineering, and he had already worked his first internship right out of high school in aggregates. He's going to work in coal this summer.
Wow.
And this, I mean, I didn't have my first mining job. So my first mining job, I may have to correct myself from the first podcast, was with Granite Construction in Sacramento, California.
Okay, yeah.
So that was my first summer, but that was after my sophomore year.
So you've got some industrial minerals.
Oh yeah. So I mean, at this industrial minerals conference, I was an industrial minerals guy.
Yeah.
You know, coming through, you know, aggregates and sand and gravel more in California, in that part of California. Titanium, you know, zircon, heavy mineral sands. Then I was a phosphate guy, you know, and then, well, I mean, I know you wanted to touch a bit on maybe drones and some of the work I'm doing there.
Fantastic, yeah,
but
absolutely.
The whole reason I specialized in drones in graduate school at Virginia Tech is, you know, first was some of the work I did with a company called Harrison Western out of Lakewood, Colorado. So my first assignment there was building ore chutes, or my crew. I was a project manager.
Ore chutes.
Ore chutes for a big block caving operation. But big ones, maybe not what you've seen.
How big?
Oh gosh, I don't even know the tonnage anymore, but I mean, large haul trucks, basically.
Wow.
Back in, hit a button and get semi-autonomous loading.
So load a whole truck, because I've seen big ore chutes that fill large ore cars, you know, maybe some that are 10 tons.
Oh, this is haul trucks. This is articulated haul trucks and you know, underground crusher. The belt goes through the Continental Divide. I don't recall how many miles, 15 miles, you know, to the plant, the Henderson mill. But that's, I mean, this is 20 years ago. It's kind of dating me a little bit.
I doubt the technology's changed much.
No, they're probably not so much. But again, I know, you know, fast forward 20 years, I mean, they have drones underground at the Henderson mine. They're doing LiDAR scanning and, you know, different things that I certainly didn't know about 20 years ago. And then that company, Harrison Western, they had some projects with Barrick at the Turquoise Ridge mine at the time, the Springer mine, which is a tungsten mine and mill in Nevada.
Very high interest in that right now. Yeah, from Blue Moon again, and then others are looking at other areas in Nevada and Utah for tungsten.
It's a small mining world, right?
It is very small, yeah.
So, you know, I had projects there, so I had relocated to Winnemucca, Nevada, and I was working on those two projects. We took a helicopter from Denver to Wyoming to visit an underground copper mine, high-grade copper mine from the turn of the 19th century. I mean, you know, it was really a cool experience at the time as a young engineer.
Absolutely.
But again, like, I don't think anyone had even really heard of a drone. You know, certainly the kind of drones you can fly, you know, at the consumer level or industry level.
Yeah, now they're everywhere. Yeah, most people's kids have a drone and know how to fly it.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think mining was heating up 20 years ago, and so we saw some juniors kind of move in, acquire properties. Like this particular property in Wyoming was acquired by an Australian junior mining company. They definitely never been underground before, so they sent us to kind of scope it out. And I remember seeing their corporate presentation, and it was, you know, easy access underground to go do some drilling campaign, and we flew the helicopter there, went underground. I went with my notepad, and we had a digital video camera, and we kind of did a very elementary survey, and it was in desperate need of repair. You had old
Yeah,
timber sets that were
absolutely.
buckled in, and
Oh, yeah.
and I certainly didn't feel at risk or anything, but it needed work, right?
Right. If you're going to bring a rig down there and do drilling, it's
Yeah.
got to be in better condition.
Yeah, and Springer, same thing. You know,
Right.
Springer at the time, some old timber sets had burned up in their portal, which was their secondary egress. So we were hired to refurbish that. No big deal, but that took 3 months.
Right.
And then we were the first to get back underground in that mine, and we had to climb down the shaft. And for me, again, super exciting. But,
Yeah.
you know, when it came time to go back and do a master's degree, do my PhD, and I had to do something novel for my PhD, it was like, well, I could see this new drone technology being applied to underground mining, right? So there's no GPS, there's, dark conditions, a lot of the things that make drones quite easy to fly outdoors, doesn't work underground.
Yeah.
And I saw the need, and that was very early days, but now there's multiple companies that have commercialized underground drone technology and 3D scanning with LiDAR, and I kind of specialize in the photogrammetry aspect, but again, it's a game changer for a lot of operations. And again, if I had that 20 years ago, or I think I had mentioned I worked in the financial side of the business, and I kind of did similar things, going in and looking at investment opportunities. Sometimes those are in, maybe artisanal mines or places that people just haven't been mining with more modern methods and bulk mining and things like that. So, again, it was one of those things that I saw the need and certainly saw the knowledge gap and went after it, and it's just cool to see that technology really spring forward in just a few years.
So what have you seen are the biggest surprise advancements in drone technology that kind of either went much faster than you thought they would, or they just surprised you entirely for drones? Because they have changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a while since I was just a regular mining engineer, because I'm probably a jack of all trades when it comes to mining engineering, process engineering. I've done a lot of different
you've
things.
been on the finance side. But
So I still dabble in a lot of things, even as a professor.
Right.
I love getting in the field. I love going underground, and
It's the fun part.
I love that part of
it.
Yeah. But so I didn't have a drone in industry ever. I didn't know it. I didn't have even GPS like you do on your cell phone today. Right. So things were very different. I mean, I had a handheld GPS when we went. When I guess it was 2011 when I bought my first handheld GPS and was taking it around the world just to kind of, and I even had a GPS in my digital camera. It wasn't a smartphone, but it helped geotag. Okay, this is exactly. It's helpful, as you know.
Very useful.
If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you can at least see the geotag where you took the picture, right?
Right.
That's one thing, simple but hugely important. On the drone side, I would say. So I started when I kind of conceptualized, hey, let's fly a drone underground and see if we can do photogrammetry, which doesn't make any sense, by the way, because it's pitch black dark underground.
Well, that's what I was thinking about, like the logistics of mounting lights on a drone to get enough light to do the photogrammetry.
And that's still a challenge. I mean, that's when I started building drones.
Right.
Because your typical consumer drone that you could afford with a small budget on a research project, unless you have dedicated funding, I mean, you can actually buy some kits that are, I think, a bit more suitable than your DJI Mavic drone or something like that, which are phenomenal consumer level drones, even for industry. They're very capable. But I would say, well, to go back a little bit, so the first drone I flew was a DJI Phantom 2 that a previous researcher had broken, and I had to repair it. And decent drone, but underground it flew horribly, and some of that was probably having to piece it back together.
Yeah.
But it didn't even have a camera. I strapped a GoPro. I put some basic lights, LED lights on it, and it worked. I mean, at a very high level, it worked, right? And it was just going from there. Okay, you can do photogrammetry underground. You've got to address the lighting. You're having to do a lot of corrections for it. With just drift without GPS positioning. There's other sensors that are on modern drones. For example, optical flow, like your computer mouse, right? It'll kind of help hold position with light.
Right.
There's sonar, some things that are less common, but they exist. And you can, if you build a drone, the advantage is, from a research perspective, there's a lot of things you can buy sensor-wise, and strap on and kind of make modules,
Yeah.
But I would say the other change, if any of your audience are into drones or know
quite a few of them are, for sure,
some of DJI's equipment. I mean, I try to follow it as best as I can, but I think we're on the mini series. These are 300, well, maybe $800 drones now. DJI Mini 5 Pro.
Yeah, we have our field guys. So sometimes we bring out the matrice, so we do the full drone survey. But for a lot of the smaller site visits and stuff, they just pack it in their backpack and they pop it out and toss it up in the air, and they're great for
Very
that. Like
capable.
doing a little ortho or just getting some imagery, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that to me, it's just much more accessible.
Right.
Right. And very, like, at least with some of the new drone systems, turnkey. You don't hardly even need any experience.
Yep.
But a specific example is you go from the DJI Mini 3 or 4, which started steadily improving their optical sensors, which can be used for positioning, and they'll fly underground pretty well if you give it some light.
Yeah.
To the 5 Pro, which I think just came out, where they've added time of flight sensors like LiDAR sensor, a basic one, which would work underground, right? It's providing its own light.
Yeah.
I have the DJI M300, which is more industrial professional drone that can carry the gamma ray sensor that I mentioned in the talk today.
Yeah, that's a good platform for, we have an M300 as well. And in terms of what you can strap on it and stuff, I want to put a couple of powerful shortwave UV lights on it.
Yeah.
Prospect for Scheelite and Tungsten.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'm still, there's a lot of experimentation to do, but
see, the issue, when I was writing, my master's, which was on photogrammetry for underground, and I talked about drones and that, and then certainly my dissertation, which was all about drones. Not everyone has a huge budget, even at the mine level, right? And so they're having to ask someone if you ask your manager to buy a $10,000 DJI M300, they may approve it, but if you crash it, you're not getting another one, right?
And it is a risk. I remember our first drone was like $25,000, and it was fixed wing, and I had a hell of a time insuring that thing.
Oh yeah,
it was very expensive to insure.
Yeah, and as a researcher, I could turn it loose with an undergraduate researcher or grad student, but if they crash, goodbye project.
There you go.
So there's that risk. But to me, that's the big change. There's a low barrier of entry to buy lower end model drone, but articulate and prove that it works, especially on a surface mine, right? A lot of people, for better or worse, I think one of the misunderstandings is, you can do photogrammetry very easily now with a base level drone.
Yep.
The difference is the accuracy of that camera on there. It may have warpage, and it's not professional quality.
Yeah, the quality in the optics is something that good glass is always expensive.
Yeah.
And getting a good lens on there, good sensor, and then the accuracy of RTK versus just standard.
That's what I was going to say. Most people, it's not. I think we're playing a little bit of catch up. I think on the academic side, at least when I taught surveying at the university level, because there are a lot of new technologies that have come on the scene. Certainly since I was an undergrad, like RTK, GPS, or GPS in general.
Yep.
And we still teach a lot of the traditional basics of surveying. But the reality is a lot of mining engineers today, they're, usually it's the young guy or girl that gets the keys to the drone or, gets the GPS surveying equipment, and they just don't touch some of the more basic stuff anymore.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of value in understanding the old way. I know when we learned how to stake mining claims, we used to explore abandoned mines, Crystal and I. We explored abandoned mines, and we got a call out of the blue from this guy, and he said, hey, I need you to stake a bunch of mining claims in Arizona. And it was 120 degrees. It was the middle of summer, July. And he said, I need you to stake like 500 mining claims. And I said, we don't know how to stake mining claims. We don't do that. We explore abandoned mines. And he goes, in more words, he said, you guys are dumb enough to go explore abandoned mines. You can stake claims at 120 degrees. It's probably less dangerous or about the same. In reality, staking the claims at 120 degrees is way more dangerous than exploring abandoned mines. But he said, I will train you. And he brought a guy out, an old prospector. I'm sure he's long passed. We're probably some of the last people he taught. And he taught us how to stake mining claims with a hip chain and a compass.
Oh, yeah.
And he taught us how to do it with a GPS. So we actually started from the beginning. And there's a lot of value in understanding the basics, because I've had the GPS run out of battery, and I've had to go back to reading the topo and going, well, it's okay. I have a topo that shows the points, and I can actually figure out using the tools I have where the post should go. And so there's value in that.
And as you know, whether it's out west or even the eastern United States, you can go places there's no cellular reception.
Yep.
It happens with drones. Sometimes you need to load that base map.
Oh yeah.
If you don't do it before you get to the field, you
Or
may not be flying your drone.
It's like in the middle of an update and it's like, you need to finish this update. Oh no, we got to drive all the way back, get the signal. The Starlink's changing that.
Yeah, good point.
Wild.
Yeah, but it's just happened so fast, right? So, you know, the technology certainly help, but I think the fundamentals are still important for that very reason because, yeah, I mean, I'm sure some of the underground mines you went to, certainly here where the humidity, you probably noticed maybe more humidity here than Utah.
Yes. Oh, I can feel it here. Yeah. It's actually quite pleasant though this time of year.
But that transition when especially if you drive underground, so a lot of the limestone mines that I've been doing work at here in the east.
You just immediately fog up.
Yeah, they fog up, right?
Yep.
And so that happens to your drone cameras, it happens to any type of camera you take underground if you don't kind of acclimate it to that different environment.
Yeah, so. we had that a lot because we used to, when we did these abandoned mine surveys and stuff, we'd bring down a big camera and it you know, it was all rubberized and protected, but there's nothing we could do to keep the lens from fogging.
That's right, yeah.
Other than just cool it down or keep it warm. But then after a while, it climatizes. But yeah, I mean, drone technology, so much has changed in terms of you know, the battery and how long they last and the payload and even in lighting, like how much brighter the lights are.
And lighter, LEDs versus incandescent. I mean, so when I worked at the Henderson mine, again, this is 19, 20 years ago, it's a long time. But we were still carrying lead acid batteries on our hip with a cable.
An Edison cap lamp.
Yeah, I mean, you take it for granted now. I mean, now, I haven't been to a mine in the last 10 years that didn't convert over to lithium batteries, you know, at least in like a hard rock mine, right?
Yeah.
And it's all self-contained, right?
Yeah, the coal mines are a little slower because they have all the extra regulations around that.
And that, when I was, you know, I'm still involved with that research, but not to the same extent. A lot of this characterization work that we're talking about is kind of taken the majority of my time.
Right.
The drone work I do now is more on surface, you know, utilizing different sensors to do field surveys. But, you know, we'll try to do more underground work when I can. But yeah, I mean, you know, like just those batteries in like the drones and whatnot, to get them permissible to use in a coal mine is a whole other challenge.
Yeah.
It was something I had hoped to address in my underground research, but much easier said than done there. I mean, the certification process is quite lengthy. And so to get a drone to fly that has no chance of having a spark from a brushed motor versus brushless or, you know, enclosed. And there's been research projects, you know, I think from NIOSH or MSHA, I can't recall, but you know, there were some research projects probably 5 years ago, I mean, quite some time ago. I think it was New Mexico was doing some research trying to design something, right? That, you know, a battery that wouldn't have a chance of exploding. Like these are, again, easier said than done, like you completely mitigate any potential risk. Right?
Yeah, particularly lithium batteries. I mean, the airline industry is dealing with that
Exactly.
now. I mean, it's huge. Like now everything's lithium batteries and everybody's got them, so they're dealing with that, making it permissible. We did an underground survey in a coal mine, and we have our Exxon pack that's the SLAM LiDAR, and we were rappelling down a ventilation shaft, just doing a sort of geotechnical survey. So they wanted a LiDAR scan, and we had to get a special exemption to take that piece of equipment in because it was something we couldn't really redesign. So we actually had to go through a whole special process to be able to take it in, to do one quick project. And yeah, and that's common, but yeah, it's been amazing, the drone technology. So where do you see it going in the future?
Oh gosh, well, so, you know, where I was getting into with my research, so, you know, again, from an academic research perspective, again, budget limited, I'm not commercializing anything.
Right.
So I couldn't afford a crash, right?
Right.
So I tended to fly and do a lot of my testing in underground limestone mines, which, you know, I mean, you could Google probably some of my pictures where you'll see entries that are 100 feet tall underground.
Right.
30 meters plus, right? I mean, it's quite insane. Yeah. I mean, typically it would be 30 foot tall, you know, room and pillar operations was quite common during the testing. But again, my whole mission or goal, well, was two things: getting like photogrammetry, for example, or LiDAR, I mean, to a level of quality that you could do geotechnical engineering with it,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
That you know, and I guess the other part of like the lighting conversation, you know, when I was building three-dimensional models from this data, I mean, whether it was photogrammetry or LiDAR, when you're just underground, especially by yourself, or if you don't have equipment with large lights, and you're looking at a pillar, or you're looking at some feature of an underground mine, you know, you're seeing the tree out of that forest, right?
Yeah.
You can't see this 40-foot by 40-foot pillar and what it looks like in its entirety.
Yeah.
I mean, even with good LED lights on your cap lamp, you know, if it's 100 foot tall in the air, I mean, I need binoculars to see.
Oh, I've been in stopes where even my brightest light, I've got lights that are over 2,000 lumens or 10,000 lumens. They just get crazy.
And then it gets usually a focused beam,
and you can
right?
barely see across some of the stuff, especially if there is some humidity.
Exactly.
Then it's like your visibility is awful.
Yep. Or dust. Again,
yes.
common in the real world, right?
Right.
So, and I'm sure abandoned mines where there's no, you know, watering and kind of dust suppression.
If it's silty and we're walking through it, it's all over the place.
So, but again, like when you can kind of put these scans together and start, you know, visualizing it in 3 dimensions, I mean, to me, it's pretty eye-opening. And you were talking about like the Brunton compass and measuring like discontinuities.
Hip chains.
I mean, now, and again, you know, there's still very much an important skill to be had to do that.
Yeah.
But now you can get these digital twins, you know, these digital representations of these underground features. And again, I mean, I want to say it's lifelike, but you know, in the real world, in the real life, you can't even see it with your naked eye. So you're able to compile this together. And to me, it's a game changer, but it doesn't mean it's well saturated in industry yet.
Yeah, I don't think it is, but I think particularly as we move into autonomy and more of that, digital twins are going to be very key, critical for every mine to have a digital twin that their teams are working with and doing the planning and everything. But as the drones become more common and the autonomy becomes there, you know, from roof bolting to, you know, there's autonomous rigs now that can drill, shoot, blast, they can do all this, where in the future, everyone may be working off the digital twin in the office and the actual mine may be completely dark with no humans in it, so.
Yeah, it's a real possibility. And I mean, I think the presentation we just came from at this conference here was talking about geotechnical engineering and you know, having documentation of you know, the pit and the benches, and you know, there was even some slides showing, which I'm sure was a photogrammetry model that fed some computer software. But you know, I think the other thing again that's changed, because I've been back at the university for almost 10 years now, and to me it feels like yesterday that I started, but so much has changed. And you know, my computer 10 years ago to the laptops that students come in as first-year engineers at Virginia Tech today, the ability to render these 3D models, I mean, and you're talking 8 hours to 30 seconds in some cases. It's unbelievable.
Instant,
My phone can build these 3D models, and they're not, you know, they're not survey grade by any means, but they're very capable. And if you know, and this is the kind of thing I tried to work with industry on, is like, hey, I understand you may not have the budget for this $50,000 LiDAR scanner or this $50,000, $100,000 drone. But look, you can use your phone now. If you have an iPhone or Samsung with kind of the new LiDAR sensors built in, there's some free apps. If you can give it some light, you know, you can actually build a 3D model, and you know, you can better articulate in that safety meeting or that meeting with your mine manager or superintendent, whoever, like, hey, this may be an issue, we need to do something about it, or hey, like we need to put a rock bolt in, you know, whatever it may be. But like, to think about doing that in the not, you know, so distant past, and say, hey, you know, pillar number 5B or whatever, you know, like now you can show things and show things in a much more dramatic way.
Oh yeah, and it's so much easier to spot problems and do work. And yeah, you were talking about the iPhone. We had David Boardman on the show. Not too many episodes back. Last month, David Boardman was on with Stockpile Reports.
Gotcha, yeah.
So, and he was talking about that, and he has hundreds of thousands of scans a day now that people are doing with their phones. And so the investment, and they get like 5 free scans a day or something. So it's like, for mine sites to just start digitizing basic things, the barrier to entry has never been lower. I mean, you've got, all your guys have phones, the stockpiles are there, the app's free, you can start collecting the info. And so that's there, but his greater mission is every point, and his big overarching picture, and he's really a technologist, he's not a mining guy, he's more of a broad technologist, but is that every point on the planet will eventually be digitized and re-updated every, every day or whatever. So it's always constantly going to be monitored. And areas like mine sites he's focused on, because that's a microcosm where it really makes sense to do that. Because every piece of equipment, everything, the more it's monitored and the more you understand what's happening, be it the rock mechanics and what's happening on the face, or the equipment and the maintenance or the haul cycles or all that, it's safety and it's efficiency and it improves the economics. And so everybody's really on board. And of course environmental too. I mean, all the monitoring, air monitoring, dust monitoring, all that can happen with all these sensors and computing power and everything, just it's environmentally sound too. So
the issue though is sometimes there's too much data, right? And I'm sure if you've done any photogrammetry LiDAR surveys, some big ones, especially if you've, if you're using SLAM LiDAR, you're collecting large, point clouds, right? And that's where I think there's some catching up to do on the data storage or processing of that data. It's quite intense.
On a small scale, just computing power locally, but on the bigger scale, we're seeing it all over the country now with electricity prices, the data centers and the growth of the data centers, the need for more processing. So that's another one where there's hard limitation. I mean, we deal with it all the time with the drone surveys we do is, I'll say, well, why aren't we just putting that in propeller? Just making it easy. Just drop. It's because it'll do 100 acres, 200 acres. Some of our sites are 3, 4, 5,000 acres, and it just breaks everything. I mean, even still with all the modern computing and stuff, it's a lot of data.
But it's just a matter of time, right?
Right.
Like I can remember, well, I don't want to date myself on your show here, but we were using the 100 megabyte zip disks in the computer lab.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
When I was in undergrad, and that's I would say, if any of my students are watching, that's always the hard part about teaching them.
Zip drives,
I show my age to them on how good they have it compared to not that long ago. So,
no, I remember burning stuff to CDs like it was yesterday, and then I had a DVD burner, and I was like, wow, I can put gigabytes now on this. Yeah,
well, I remember where they were giving away 1 gigabyte, USB sticks at conferences quite a while ago, and that was kind of luxurious. But
that was a big deal.
You don't even want a gigabyte anymore. You can't hold anything. But to your point about like monitoring and using this data, Maptek, big software company for the mining industry, they were really generous to donate some software called PointStudio, which it was called iSight before, but I primarily use it when it was known as PointStudio. It's phenomenal, and I've kind of been with it as it's evolved over the years. And one of the applications that I thought was really cool about the drone scans or LiDAR, point cloud scans, for example, like underground, so much, or mining in general, so much is, you try to do your best engineering things, but we're not talking about widgets in a warehouse factory.
Right.
We have to adapt things to the environment.
Yep.
And there's a lot of unpredictability about the way the blast goes or what have you. And certain mines require a lot of additional ground control. They may need bolting. They may need mesh. They may need shotcrete. One of the cool features in that software is you can do a scan as part of development. You use your drone, whatever you want to use. And then you can scan it post-shotcrete. You can see the thickness of that shotcrete. And you can see if you were efficient or not. Under breakage, over breakage, rock blasting fragmentation. Like there's all these things that that workflow in my mind has sped up dramatically.
And it's just happening all at once. All these different areas, and then it's spreading into AI and everything.
The AI part too. I mean, AI detection of joint sets and discontinuities, thousands of them in these large scans. I mean,
it's amazing. It all comes back to the same critical minerals we're looking for. All that equipment's driven by the things we're using it to find and process.
Very true, very true.
Which is kind of wild. You think about that circular, like, because of all that, we need this, but we need all that to find this.
But it drives that innovation, right? I mean, going from hard drives to solid state drives to even faster NVMe solid state drives, right? And when you're limited at 1 terabyte to 4 terabyte to 8 terabytes, I mean, it's dramatic. The processor size getting smaller and smaller and more efficient.
And then you reach limits, and there's hard limits and on things on silicon wafers and different things. They're looking at more advanced materials that require a whole different set of minerals. It's pretty interesting, but it's always evolving, always.
Yeah, and so to go back to the drones, again, my original intent was always to use that drone technology in those old mines that I had to venture in,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
That, you know, that I'm squatting down to fit in,
Yeah.
right? And maybe
there's a lot of areas you're like, I'd love to know what's back there, and
Yeah.
I can't safely go back there, or I can't, in good conscience, send anyone back there. So what
exactly,
to do? Yeah.
exactly. And so, I mean, having built a lot of drones myself, you know, even GPS sensors that you can buy pretty inexpensively for a drone that you build yourself have gotten smaller and smaller. And I
Yeah.
would say, you know, I had a really good undergraduate engineer working with me when I was doing my PhD, who was on Virginia Tech's drone racing team.
Oh,
He now works
cool.
for a drone company
Yeah,
in
those are
California.
so fast.
But
It's amazing.
I
yeah.
think that industry or hobby or you know what have you did a lot for drone technology,
Yeah.
because you rebuilt those drones, you know, you assembled a lot of those pieces yourself, so if you crashed in a drone race, you could rebuild it. But again, we saw, you know, and there's a lot of open source software built around those systems, and so that's really sped up, I think, a lot of the drone development, certainly for the research side,
Right.
especially on a budget. You know, a lot of this stuff would have been military grade in days past.
Oh,
and,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
and we've seen it obviously around the world, like
Yeah.
people building drones for lots of different reasons these
Yep.
days.
Yep.
So.
Oh yeah, lots of drones flying all over. I mean, where there used to just be a handful, now there probably right now 100,000 drones flying somewhere on the planet.
Yeah, I saw an advertisement or you know, post about, I guess, yeah, be careful if you're driving in Virginia getting a speeding ticket, but talking about, you know, law enforcement using drones to detect speeding.
Yeah.
And they'll see you before you ever see, I guess, the patrolman.
Yeah.
It's got it up
Oh,
in the
the
air.
drones will get you, yeah, and you won't ever see them coming.
Yep.
Fascinating. Well, it's been great having you back on the show again.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's
Appreciate
good to
it.
see
You know, nice to come out to Virginia and meet you in person and
Yeah.
again and be
Yeah.
able to film. So
Yeah, no,
and-
my pleasure. And you know, tell your audience, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on the Virginia Tech website, vt.edu or mining.vt.edu. But yeah, it's always a pleasure, Stuart. And
yeah, love having you on.
yeah,
and
my
we'll
pleasure.
do it again for sure, and
Sounds
hopefully in person somewhere. Maybe
I'm
again
sure.
in Pittsburgh, or who knows? Maybe we'll have you out west to look at a mine. Maybe we can do an episode in a mine somewhere
Hey, I'm all for it.
and shoot it with a drone.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Catch you next week. Like, subscribe, comment. Love your comments. Thanks for watching.